That's what a story will do. It draws you in and it keeps you there. And it's almost like the artist was probably in flow state when they wrote it. If they can get you into flow state where you forget about everything else, dude, that's magic.
Aloe, I'm so excited for this. As I said, I've done many, many shows, but this will be the most fun. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Now, I would love to start. You grew up in Southern California, raised by your obviously parents. And I want to start with, actually, how did you first fall in love with music? Was there a moment where you remember, this is what I have to do?
Well, I'd never thought about music as a career, but I really did fall in love with music just at home because my dad would always have amazing music playing, whether it was salsa from Central and South America, or it was, soul music from the US. There was always something. He had a huge stereo system that was just state of the art for the time. And there was also a moment where kids out on the street were breakdancing, and they were breakdancing to this new sound that my parents didn't play in the house. So I'd go outside and I'd dance with them. And that's when I fell in love with hip hop music.
I love it. When was the moment when you realized that this was what you had to do for your life, for your life's work?
When I got laid off from Ernst & Young. Years later from the breakdancing story. So I'd been making music all through high school. At age 9, I started writing lyrics. At 15, I started recording. By 17, I was releasing music to friends and people all over the Southern California area. But the internet was burgeoning, and eventually my songs, while I was in college, my songs made it all across the world. So when I graduated from college, I went to go work as a full-time, consultant in the industry, in the health sector industry. And my music was just making it all around the world. So when it came time for, the company was restructuring, there was a reduction of force, I got laid off. And I thought, I'll do music until it's time to get another job. I really like music.
It was always told when I was younger that it's actually like great people are defined by how they respond to tough times. Can I ask you, when you think about that, what was the tough time and how did you respond? Was it getting laid off and going, oh God, what am I going to do? What strikes you as that memory when I say that quote?
Yeah, I think definitely getting laid off was the tough time. There was a lot of pressure coming from my parents, being, immigrants from Panama, me being first generation American, going to college, wanting to please my parents and have that kind of experience of staying in a job for 20, 30 years and retiring. There was pressure from there. There was definitely pressure from myself, like wanting to achieve and do something more, something greater than where I'd been as a business consultant, knowing I could do more and not having any kind of crystal ball to see what music would I have to offer. I honestly was just kind of taking a break, taking a break from the daily grind. But it was a 3-year break that ended up with an opportunity to share my voice with the world in a way that I had never had access to before. So that was it.
Would you have pursued the musical career if you hadn't have been laid off?
Nah, no way. If I was still at Ernst & Young, if I was still business consulting, I'd continue through that pathway. I'd probably have left Ernst & Young to go to work for one of the companies that maybe we were consulting for. Probably would have made my way up the executive ladder and probably would have been some sort of entrepreneur on the side, or maybe would have started a competitive company to the one I was working for, because I would have recognized I love processes, and I would have recognized processes that maybe the company was reticent to change or just had, slow bureaucratic ability to pivot. And I would have thought, there's a better mousetrap. I'm going to go build it and see you at the finish line.
We're going to get to processes. You mentioned your parents there. I always think that parents actually impact a lot about the way that we parent. Such wisdom for someone with no girlfriend and no children. Thank you. I know what you're thinking. How did your parents impact the way that you parent today? I know you've got a little one now. How did they impact how you think about good parenting?
Well, presence is very important. So one of the things is that my dad was in the military. He spent 30 years in the Marine Corps. He was gone most of the time. So the impact there is that when I had the opportunity to become a father, I was also at the beginning of, a career traveling the world. And I recognized soon that I wanted to find the places within this industry that will keep me paid, having an income to be able to feed and support my family, but also will keep me home. And so rather than having to tour all the time, I have carved a niche out of the industry so I can stay home more often than not. So that's one way it's impacted. Another way is just like being strict about certain things. My parents were strict about certain things. What I'm strict about is sort of the screen time and sugar intake. They were not. They were totally not strict about sugar intake or screen time. I got every ounce of television you could imagine with no filter or censorship.
I mean, no wonder you had such energy for the breakdancing there. I mean, now we know that the sugar was helpful. I always believe that we are like a function of our histories. And so when you think back to that, when you think back to hearing your father playing the music, when you think back to bluntly growing up and developing the love of music, we're running from something, we're running towards something. What are you running from, do you think?
Okay. If I'm running from something, I am running from being stagnant.
For me, it's an interesting one. I was always told by my family that actually, if you lived in this area, then you've made it, and then you're worthy. And so I'm running from the feeling of not being worthy because we didn't have the money, and we saw the big houses, and you can look through the windows, and they look so nice from the outside, and we didn't have that.
So okay, well, I mean, to an extent, I don't know if this makes any sense. I'm riffing now. You're asking me what I'm running from.
Yeah.
Running from fame. One of the things that happens when you get into the industry is that you get a lot of folks who come into your circle and they're part of your infrastructure, and they all sort of live or die by your ability to work. And when I recognized that, I didn't want to be responsible for everybody else's livelihoods in that way. Like, I didn't want to have to be on the road or have to be working in order for someone else to eat. And so I ran from that. I shed myself of as much of the infrastructure as possible, like, brought management in-house rather than having a manager. So I'm in charge. I get to control the time, shed myself of retainers for, lawyers and other hangers on, just so I could kind of have freedom, to do what I want when I want.
Was that easy to do? Because that is their business. As horrible as it seems, you are a product they make money from.
It's not easy. It is not easy to run everything yourself, especially when in a system where there are incentives to being part of the machine. There are definitely incentives to being part of the machine. But I've figured out where I fit, and I figure I could always jump back in the machine whenever I want. And I think, another thing that I'm running from is rules. I've always looked at rules like good suggestions. It's a good suggestion. Is that a stop sign? Yeah, it's a good suggestion. And so when it comes to rules, I always think maybe there's something, maybe there's a better way to do all of this. And so that's another thing I think I'm running from.
It's funny, you say good suggestions. When I hear rules, I hear what is the opposite, and I will take that, which is much worse. Yours is more helpful. Mine's like, even if it is worse, I want to do the opposite. Do you know what I mean? That's a terrible. My penchant I have a penchant for efficiency, and I couldn't be a contrarian just for the sake of feeding my that desire. I'd certainly weigh what is faster and more rewarding, and probably go with that. And if the rule is that's what I'll do, But if the rule isn't that, then certainly there's a better way, and hopefully nobody will notice and I don't get in trouble. I'll just do it this way. So if that's what you're running from, I love this, by the way. What are you running towards? Like for me, again, I'll give you an example. Mine is I want to be a 75-year-old grandfather with my grandchildren running around me, and I want them to point to companies that are amazing and me to say, hey, we invested in, Steve and Steve from Apple when it was just them in their garage and we played a tiny role in that, and them go, wow, what are you running towards?
Okay, so similar to yours, I would say I'm running towards longevity. That's certain. Running towards really loving and comforting family and friend structure. Like the things that sustain people. I keep hearing our elderly friends and family saying that having good friends and people around you is what sustains you. So that's really important. And so that's what I'm running toward. In the meantime, throughout all the acts of my life, I want to be able to create as much joy as possible. And I try to do that with music, but I'm recognizing that I can do that in so many other ways as well. So my wife and I, we are, heavily involved in local philanthropic endeavors and nonprofit organizations. But at the end of the day, I want people to be able to say that, Aloe Blacc was part of the fabric of my joy. Whether it was from the money that he offered the organization that supported me, or was it the music that and the lyrics that I absorbed from his songs, or the products that his company created.
Can I ask you on the longevity side? I would probably say I'm struggling right now. I think the joys of the show, which probably why it does well, is I use it as an open therapy session. But I would say I'm probably struggling right now because I look at a lot of up and coming media publications, houses, personalities, and I constantly feel like I'm on a treadmill. I constantly feel like, shit, what are they doing? What are they doing? What are they doing? They're better than me at this. I'm sure, how do you get over that treadmill of fear that you're going to be replaced in what is, for both of us, a very fast-moving industry?
I mean, like I said, look, for me, it's all about efficiency. So once I figured out I had enough money for my grandkids, I'm not racing against other people at this point. Like at this point, I'm just making sure that the family around me is happy, that we are content, and that I can then chase after the things that make me happy every day. And every day, it's not writing a song that makes me happy. Every day, there may be something different, and I want to be able to do that. But it's the measure does not come from what someone else is up to, because I've seen, and we've all seen, like the richest of the rich get divorced and have terrible, mental health challenges, and that ultimately the barometer for success has to include way more than finances. And my barometer of success, I think the very, very small part of it at this point, because I've already had what I feel is enough on the finance side, is everything that relates to humanity and family, and not measurements that are external in that way, outside of that.
I am insecure and egotistical. You, on the other hand, are much more secure, and so that's why we have these differing perspectives. Welcome to venture capital. We're very normal here. I do want to ask. You mentioned like the writing there. I was too interested. I love your music, like many millions around the world, but I just don't think that people understand how it comes together. So I want to break it up into the company creation side, but also the music creation side. On the music creation side, what's the process for writing new music? Is there a pattern? Do you go into a room with a notepad? Like, how does it work?
Some people have patterns. Some people have like systems that they have to engage every time they write a song. I'm available to the muses of the world at any moment, and I'm constantly writing down ideas or recording quick ideas into my voice memos. Sometimes I'm scheduling, and I'll schedule a 4-hour session, no longer than 4 hours, for meeting with someone else to come up with an idea. We talk for the first half hour, maybe 45 minutes. From that discussion, a great idea, maybe a phrase may come about. And that phrase will be the nucleus of a brand new song. We'll take that phrase, turn it into a chorus, take that chorus, build a story around it, and write 2 or 3 verses, maybe a pre-chorus, post-chorus, a bridge. And we've got the form and structure of a song. Now, that sounds really clinical, but when you get it down and you understand the format you can spend so much more time on the beauty of the poetry. And when you're working with a professional, it happens in 4 hours. When you're not, you got to come back the second day or the third day to finish things up.
You mentioned like a story, and when you have that story that you're building around it, what makes a good story versus a not so good story?
Okay, so a good story, I feel, is something that helps the listener forget that the world exists and fall into your paradigm, whatever fantasy that you're building. In a story like Elton John's Your Song, you hear the lyrics that Bernie Taupin wrote, and you start to find yourself sitting on the rooftop kicking off the moss, right? You actually are there when it happens. Or Big Yellow Taxi, late one night, she heard the screen door slam and a big yellow taxi took away her old man. Like, you can see the taxi, you can see the man leaving, and all of these things, like, they actually become where you are if you close your eyes. That's where you are. That's what a story will do. It draws you in and it keeps you there. And it's almost like the artist was probably in flow state when they wrote it. If they can get you into flow state where you forget about everything else, dude, that's magic. I consider songwriting, a well-written song, magical, because it really does sprinkle that fairy dust of timelessness over everyone.
Can I ask, when you're writing that story with that other person, do you know when it's a magical story, or is it at the end when you re-listen, when you regroup and go through it, that you go, that?
Sometimes, no, you know it when you're in it. Sometimes you know it when you're in it. Sometimes you don't, but I think mostly you know it when you're in it. And also you just bring your best to the room. Like when I wrote Wake Me Up, I brought my best to the room, right? I brought the best lyrics I had in my phone at the time to the session. There's no reason to do any less. Like, why? You only live once. Like, why would you bring 75%? Why? Just so you can see they're bringing 80. Okay, I'll bring 81. Like, that's a waste of time. That's a waste of your time, you know? And so for me, it's all about taking the challenge, throwing my hat in the ring and saying, I'm going to fight as hard as I can to get the best product that I can so that the world can ultimately experience something better.
You said when you're with a pro that you can do it in 4 hours versus maybe with someone as, talented as myself, it might take months. But when you're with a pro, it takes 4 hours. What's the difference between a pro and someone else? What does that pro get out of you, get out of the story that makes it a shorter, more efficient process?
They just have a facility with words and all the dynamics that come into poetry, like alliteration, allusion, consonants, extended metaphor. They know when, entendre, they know when and how to employ all of these devices where you don't have to like pull teeth or do all the heavy lifting, right? I can come up with a line that's going to be great. They'll come up with a line that's going to be great. I don't have to edit it. We're all kind of, firing at full.
Can I ask, how often when you go through this process, how often do you get to the end and then you go, you know what? It's not right. It's not a hit. How often do you throw out material?
You can't determine what's going to be a hit, and quite often it's not right, but it's okay because you can always edit before you get to final record. So songwriting is, that's the demo. You record, we call it in Nashville, they call it the work tape. I just call it the demo, like the songwriting demo. And you're going to go back into the studio, you're going to fix things, and you're probably going to change some words here and there. You're probably going to modify a melody here and there. Like I wrote a song this morning and the placeholder is flower, but it really could be orange blossom because that says more than the word flower, right? It could be blue iris, right? It says more, and blue iris says so much more than orange blossom because now at blue iris, there's a double entendre because you're talking about blue eyes or you're talking about a flower. So it's like you let the song incubate for a day, 2, maybe a week, maybe a month, could be a year. And by the time you come back to it, it almost rewrites itself.
Sorry, for this, say this song is a great example. So you were thinking about it overnight in bed and then you got up and wrote it this morning. Like how does that come to be? It's not for me, that's not normal to hear. Like,
Um,
would you know what I mean?
I'm always writing, but a song that I really love by Fleetwood Mac came on, and it's a song called Songbird. It inspired me to write something similar. And so I just sat for a few minutes and kind of let the emotion and the magic fairy dust that was sprinkled on me by Songbird inspire me to write something in that world. Something very touching, sentimental, and compassionate. And instead of Songbird, my thought was flower. But Songbird sounds so cool. They didn't just say bird, right? They gave the bird more dynamic by calling it a songbird. So flower, to me, is not dynamic enough. This is a very kind of strategic method of songwriting, but it's also, I'm inspired and I can use my left and right brain at the same time. And so I want to make the word flower more interesting so I can find a different kind of flower to describe than just using the word flower.
So what do you do with it then? So then you write this song, we have Orange Blossom, we have Flower. What happens then? Then you ruminate on it for a couple of weeks, couple of months, take
So
it to
it's
a
written,
shoot?
I think the next thing I'll do is I will record very rudimentally into my system, me on piano singing the lyrics to this song. And it will be decent and I will love it. And then I'll play it in the car when I drop my kids off at school. And if they love it, they'll ask for it the next day, or they'll ask for it when I pick them up. They'll say, "Can you play the new song again?" And then I'll know I have something really special. Then I'll send it to my keyboard player who spent 20 years perfecting his skill. I've spent 20 years perfecting lyrics, so that I don't claim to be a great pianist, but or my guitarist, and he'll do the same. They'll embellish and create the entire instrumental world around my vocal, and then we've got a song.
I love that. Can I ask, you mentioned this seamless process of writing this song this morning, whatever we choose. I think Tiger Lily, by the way, is a very adventurous flower that could be like a fun name for a song.
That's a great one.
Thank you so much. I'm here all day. My question to you is, do you ever get writer's block? Do you ever sit down with the pro and it doesn't flow? And what do you do then?
It's possible. There is the feeling of writer's block every so often. But what I do then is I go into my bag of tricks and I scroll through thousands of ideas that have been waiting for this exact moment. Thousands of ideas that I don't throw any ideas away because sometimes they meet their moment at the most unexpected time, and that could be it. And I'll find something that could be the nucleus of a new song. All right. So if the conversation isn't yielding anything special or inspired, I'll go to my cheat bag.
Do you feel you have to keep up a cadence of creation? Do you feel like, I have to sit down every month, every quarter with the pro and come up with the story? Is it
I
like,
don't. I don't. I have too many songs unreleased at this point. Like I've got my inventory is huge, and I need to start releasing music. So for me, it's not I'm not compelled to create by any sort of sense of urgency. I'm compelled to create just because I can't stop it. I can't stop the flow. It's constant. I'm compelled though to try to release as much as I can. I think that's, I have too much that's waiting to be released.
If you have an excess supply, why don't you just? But I'm super naive. Why don't you just release? More?
At this point. So I was raised and groomed in an era where less was more, and I was not ready for this transition to the digital era where more is more. And so I need to quickly readjust and use the algorithms to their benefit and continuously release music. It's just, for me, it's like, it feels a bit gratuitous to saturate the market in that way. But it's kind of, at this point, it's the flywheel. You need to be putting music out regularly so that the algorithm is favoring you, so that new audiences can find your old music and learn about your new music. It just didn't work that way as I was coming up.
I'm with you in terms of like when you'd release one every couple of years and it was kind of much more of an artistic creation process and timeline. You mentioned the algos there. I'm just super interested because, we saw Olivia Rodriguez who actually altered some of her music to algos. So she put choruses earlier in songs because certain directories favor that if you have choruses earlier. Do you think we're seeing this kind of really awkward time now where technology is impacting the creation of songs? It could be positively or negatively, but I'm just saying impacting actually how it's created.
I think we're maybe more present to it, but so technology is an aid of commerce, capitalism. The music industry is certainly a child of capitalism, right? Music isn't. Music is music. It's the oldest form of communication. But what is new is that when enterprising business impresarios in the music industry recognized that you could fit 12 songs on the same piece of vinyl and the manufacturing costs are the same, they thought, well, we can sell it for 12 times more because the buyer is getting 12 times the value. That's when albums became a product, right? And we all cherish the album like it's this amazing artistic expression that, the artist gets to tell a full story, but that's just, it's an invention. It's an invention from the record industry to sell you something that costs them a fraction to charge you more for it. So I don't necessarily look at it like technology has changed anything. I think what will happen is we will continue to make music based on how it can be sold because there are dominating factors coming from the industry.
Do you feel that pressure in the creation process? So if I'm your pro and I'm saying, hey, we need the chorus earlier because it hits algos better. Hey, we need this tone here and this tone here because it'll hit TikTok better and it's converting way higher now. Do you go, no, it's not actually how I'm thinking about Orange Blossom? Or do you go, oh, really? Oh, that's very interesting. I'll do that.
Yeah, no, it doesn't bother me and it doesn't affect me in the creative process. The creative process really, truly is genuine. It literally is the creative process with no commerce, enterprise, business crowding that space. When the song is finished, however, that's when I detach myself from it and I tell the business people, okay, what do you need to do to make this work? You're like, well, we need to Frankenstein it. Like, go ahead, just make sure that I have my original version available somewhere.
What does it mean to Frankenstein it? Sorry.
Like they want to put a rapper on it, or they need to have a producer put a drop in it or remix it somehow. Do whatever you need to do to sell it, because once people get it, they'll eventually make their way to my original version and they'll probably like it better. But we got to package it and sell it somehow. And you guys are the experts on how to sell things. So do your job. I did mine.
And you did it incredibly well to the tune of like global success and global fame, which, from the outside seems fun. Coming from Avicii. My question was like, what's the most significant thing to change with global fame? You mentioned actually was something you were running from. What changes with that fame and recognition?
Your anonymity, your peace and quiet, your sometimes in some cases your safety. When the more famous you are, the more you have to make to insulate yourself from the world that is always vying for your attention.
Is it difficult to trust people?
Is it difficult to trust people?
Because they might want something.
No.
They know who you are. It's cool being with you.
It's difficult to trust people if you don't know people, right? At some point, you have to understand human nature. You have to know what your gut says. You have to have, like a real trust in your gut about who you are so that you know how far to trust certain people. For me, it's all about an impression that I get, right at the moment I meet someone. It could be for good or bad, right? It could be wrong, but I need to go with my gut because it served me well all the way till here. So no, it's not harder for me to trust people. And I guess I can see it or smell, somebody trying to use me a mile away. And I kind of know exactly how far to let that relationship go. So
you were saying, I remember this time. I interrupted you. Were you leading somewhere there?
yeah, I was in Paris. I was with my band. We were at a restaurant and I had a burger at my lips and some woman came up behind me and said, "Oh, Aloe, can I take a picture? Can I take a photo?" And my band is looking at me like, this is crazy. Because it was right at the beginning, like, of everything, when fame really started to hit. And I just thought, this is not the way I want to live. Like, I don't want to miss out on my burgers. I don't want to be interrupted everywhere I go all the time. I need to figure out how to make my songs precede me. I need to figure out how to make sure that people know my voice, not my face. And that's what I've been kind of doing since.
You could get tips from Sia. She just seems to hide it completely.
Oh, I loved it when Sia came out. I was like, dang, she really figured it out. But yeah, that's
no one's
beautiful.
gonna know. She's going
such a
to
great idea.
Walmart, like, hey, that's too funny. The thing that I thought was like challenging also with the success that you've had is like, when you have such success with so many of your tracks, it's like the next one has to be bigger. The next one has to be bigger. Do you put that pressure on yourself of the next one being bigger and, oh, it wasn't as big as last time?
I don't put that pressure on myself. I've shed myself of the infrastructure that can campaign for that. So I don't even expect it. Like, if it happens, I'm happy for it. But if it doesn't happen, I've figured out where it is in the business that I'm going to support myself and my family. And I just want to create a catalog that will stand the test of time, like a time capsule. People will find it and be like, whoa, where did this come from? This artist was great. I love the lyric and it still works for today.
What do you want them to feel when they listen to you? I know that's a bit of a, do you want them to be inspired? Do you want them to be transported? Do you want them to be, what is that? How do you want them to feel?
It depends on the type of song. What I've found that I do mostly is what I call AIM. It stands for affirmation, inspiration, and motivation. These are songs that will hopefully be the soundtrack to you living your best life or motivating you to achieve the impossible goal, right? So songs like The Man or My Way. Those kinds of themes I want to be recognized as, themes that were my artist profile. Aloe Blacc sings inspiring music. I'm inspired when I listen to Aloe Blacc. And then there are other songs that are touching stories, that I just feel like there's another part of me that wants to be known as a great storyteller. So on my latest album, there's a song called Harvard, where I basically compare my life to the life of a hardworking blue-collar mother who, we have completely different experiences in terms of what we do for a living, but we both have kids at home that we want to feed and we want to educate, and we have that in common. So it's just, I want people to feel like, okay, yeah, Aloe's also a great storyteller that makes me feel more connected to humanity.
I totally get you on kind of that storytelling element. I have to ask about the story with Avicii. Obviously, you produced a great track with Avicii. How did that come about? And what was the most memorable moment of doing that with him?
Wow. Oh, man. Rest in peace to Tim. He was a great artist who was very passionate about music. It was the only thing it seemed that he really loved and cared about. And as he was developing as a man, finding his spirituality through other sources and not just music. But that particular song was the culmination of a couple of sessions that I had done with Tim in the studio. He'd reached out to me because he heard I Need $1. He wanted to work with a soul artist, and he was a fan of some of the songs of Marvin Gaye, and he was like, I want to do something sort of like Marvin Gaye. We didn't end up doing any soul together. We did mainly songs that felt like kind of country-esque. But that particular session, he double booked or something. He booked a session with Mike Einziger from Incubus, and I was also supposed to meet with Tim to work with him on the songs that we didn't finish. But he was double booked, and Mike Einziger was welcoming. He said, just come over, let's all work together on something. And that's when I thought, I'm going to bring the best lyrics that I have, because now not only am I working with, Avicii, because he's got hits, but Incubus got hits too. So there's no reason for me to come in with anything less. I'm not going to, I'm not going to waste this opportunity. And there's no way to know where a song is going to go in the marketplace, but I felt strongly about what I had done from an acoustic standpoint. Like, Mike had played the guitar and it was just my voice and his guitar, and then Tim took that and mixed a phenomenal smash of a dance track.
How was that session? You go and you're like, I'm going to bring my A game. I got my notes. I'm ready to go. How was the session?
It was like I said, a 4-hour session. I got in at about 8 p.m. and I sat down in the home studio, Mike's home studio. He and Tim had already been working on chord progressions, and he just starts playing the guitar and he says, what do you think of this? And I was like, that sounds great. I have a couple of lyrical ideas. I just want to, tell them to you real quick. And I just mentioned, wake me up when it's all over, when I'm wiser and I'm older. All this time I was finding myself, didn't know I was lost. And they were like, that sounds great. Can you sing it? Can sing it over this? And he starts playing guitar, and I just made up a melody, and it's pretty much the melody that we hear in the final recording. And they're like, this is perfect. We're going to record this right now. So they laid down the guitar track, and I went into the booth. As he was laying down the guitar track, I'm like quickly writing as many other lyrics as I can. So the couplets so it's not a story, so to speak. They're like I don't want to say disparate. I think they're related, but they're couplets. They all are just thoughts that I put down to create these verses. And by the time he was done recording the guitar, I went into the booth and I had to make up a melody now for the verse. And so I just made up the first melody that came to mind. And that's what you hear. And ultimately, it's basically what you hear in the final recording as well.
When it came out and it was a massive hit, how does that feel?
Well, it feels amazing. It feels really good that it was a massive hit, but it wasn't at first. Like, I performed at the Ultra Music Fest 2013, I believe, with Tim and with Mike Einziger, and we were on stage presenting this song, and Tim made a huge decision in his career to not do what everyone else did with lasers and confetti cannons and smoke and half-naked girls dancing on the stage. He brought real musicians and real vocalists on stage with him, which was, nobody else was doing that at these festivals. And he took a risk. And as I was singing, I could hear ambient audio through my microphone from the audience. Like, I could hear boos. And I just thought, okay, I'm gonna hurry up and get through this song and get off the stage. And then I went online and looked at some of what people were saying, because they were watching it live around the world, and people were like, oh, this is suicide, career suicide, and what is he doing? This is terrible. But then there were people like, whoa, this is really big. He took a risk. This is different. And so just to let you know, like, it wasn't a success at first. So I certainly was. When did it go? When did it go like bang? Like, when did it take off? I think because of the controversy. Again, this is where I wasn't paying attention to algorithms, but because of the controversy, there was a lot of talk, and that talk begets talk, and that talk then begets listening, and more people were listening, and because it was, then more people got to hear it. And we know the law of attraction. It's about familiarity, and after 3 listens, you're no longer opposed to it, right? You're more so leaning toward it, and it ended up becoming the most streamed song in Spotify history for that time, right?
I mean, that's pretty cool, isn't it? I mean, it's a nice thing to have. I have to ask, when you see like those negative comments, like in those early days, do you read them? Like, I have,
yeah, you read them and you feel bad, and you gotta realize that that has no bearing.
So
It has no
do you
bearing.
now not not read them because it's so
I still read
tempting?
them. Still read them. I
And
still
they
read them.
still
I
make
just
you feel bad.
they still make me feel bad, but I also understand that, you know, it's not the truth. It's just an opinion. And the internet is a place where people don't go to lose. People go to the internet to win. They go to win their argument. You're not going to change people's minds, right? So it's not my job to chime in and try to convert anyone. My music is supposed to do that. And if it doesn't, then that's okay. Sauerkraut's not for everyone, you know?
Do you ever have self-doubt? Like I had someone the other day who was really horrible on Twitter about me, and it fine, it's some random who I don't know, and you know, whatever. But I really was struck by self-doubt. Maybe I can't do this. Maybe I was wrong. Do you ever have that self-doubt when you read them? And what would you advise me?
I'm sorry to say, I'd never have that self-doubt. And what I advise you is that your destiny is whatever you choose it to be. It's already set, but it's also what you choose it to be, right? And so you should just, you know, like, I know where I'm going tomorrow. This person has no clue, right? So they're only judging me on my past, but I'm all about my future. I can't change that. Can't change the past. I'm all about my future, you know?
I love that.
I hope that helps.
It really does. I feel like I should almost get an invoice for your therapy. Thank you so much. You mentioned destiny there. You know, one of the most wonderful things I think in life is children, bluntly. I think it's such a gift and a joy. You've obviously recently become a father, and you said becoming a father made you want to share those experiences in music. You mentioned also the new song. What did you mean by that? And how did becoming a father specifically change how you think about the music that you create?
So the music industry is, for all intents and purposes, a young person's sport and arena. We don't get a plethora of songs that are about maturation, right? We don't get songs from our best songwriters as they're growing older into the years talking about those dynamic changes, because the industry favors youth and wants to keep churning songs that'll get a 13-year-old to listen for 8 hours a day. But I want to be able to share the fact that I was that, and I have those songs and you can hear them, but now I'm here. And this is my present state, and I want to make songs that will relate to people that are growing with me at the same stage, but or also could be instructive for people who just behind me who are about to step into parenthood and adulthood, or buying their first house, or, you know, marriage.
Sorry, I'm picturing a banging tune on like a variable mortgage rate. Anyway, no, I totally get you, and you're absolutely right. I actually saw someone said the other day to me, the only way to grow up truly, Harry, I have very deep friends, the only way to grow up truly, Harry, is to have children and you not be the central point in your life. That's the way that you grow up and humans grow up. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, that sounds insightful. I agree, just off of, you know, without analyzing it too much. It sounds true. And then the other way is do what the Dalai Lama did, right? Like, he grew up because he meditated. He recognized, I mean, he had to, he was chosen. But there are other monks who do the same. Like, they make a conscious decision and choice to steadfastly adhere to ideals and concepts about how they relate to humanity and how humanity relates to them. You know, rather than just making your principles a matter of convenience, find some principles that really mean something to you. Stick to them. That's, I think, just as helpful as having kids. Kids really make you stick to the principles, because your job now is to help them survive, and there's not a whole lot of wiggle room around that. But if you can figure it out without kids, that's a really strong, principled person.
Yeah, mate, I'm not going to Tibet to become a monk. I'd rather have kids.
No.
I don't think I'd fit in there. Where's this capitalism? How do I sell you? Oh, you don't sell? Oh, bugger. My next question is, you mentioned kids there. The other part that, you know, you mentioned earlier was, you know, your wife and the relationship that you have. I do like to understand this, because I think achieving true excellence in what you do and having a great marriage is really hard. Like, what does being a great husband mean? And what have you learned about what it takes to have that great marriage while being at the top of your game?
Wow. Okay. So you said great twice, and I'm going to say that I'm certainly not a great husband. I think slightly above average, probably. But and if you ask my wife, she'd probably like, yeah, try very average. But then again, she's never had any other husbands, so
Joy of limited data.
Great husband, great marriage. Okay. I would say so. One of the things that my wife told me early in the marriage was, if you're always on the road, what kind of relationship do we have? So that was a clear kind of climate setting conversation.
Did you respond a happy one?
I did not. I took the cue as from the rhetorical question. I took the cue that she was saying, "Don't be away all the time," and I'm not away all the time. And we made a rule that 2 weeks at the most, 1 week is cool, and whenever possible, bring the family. That's what we do.
How do you retain romance with a little one? Like, how do you stop it being functional and still like, hello?
Yeah, well, that's also very hard. That's the thing about the average and a little bit above average husband answer, where my wife will probably be like, yeah, you're kind of average. You have to be intentional, and I'm not constantly doing the romantic things that I think I should for my wife, but we talk every day, all the time. We're always communicating. I make time for her, and she was like, no, I don't want you to schedule me into the calendar. And when because she didn't want it to be clinical that way. I was like, but it sort of has to be, so that, when at evening time, it's the kids. Like, we both are present for the kids. And then after the kids go to sleep, then we're present for each other. But how do you do that during the day? Right?
I'll give you a tip. So I do this with girlfriends that come in and out of my life. But calendar invites, okay, are brilliant. Okay, they seem unromantic at the start, but the way you play with them is with the titling. You can get creative. Do you know what I mean? Like middle of the day. Yeah.
I'm not going to take that advice, but thank you so much.
And then they're like, "Ooh, what's the next title?" And you're like, "Well, you'll have to wait and see." Do you see what I mean? There's a reason I'm single and you're married, all right? Sort of. Calendar invites, by the way, never work well. Never work well. Don't send them for days. I love that, though.
We all have different love languages, so I just try to be aware of what I'm doing that's not her love language, and what is going to be helpful.
What's your love language? I just did this the other day.
I don't know if I'm using all the terms right, but I know that what I like is just service, and I'm a provider. So, and I think that's, as you were saying before, what has been from my parents that has been most impactful is service and providing.
And your wife's, do you do that interplay and exchange? Like, oh, what do you need? And here's what I need.
I know hers. The problem is I always default to mine. And I'm always thinking, oh, well, service. I'm going to, it's service. But she's gifts. She's gifts and words of affirmation, words of affection.
Oh my God, she's the dream.
Right?
Like,
and so as a lyricist, I've got the words. Like, that's not hard.
But like, gifts is fantastic. You can literally
gifts is hard.
Buy Cartier.
Gifts is hard.
Gifts is hard for me. Cartier is not hard. Chanel is easy,
okay.
My friend.
All right, yeah. Well,
it's when they want time. You're like, oh God, next. Next. Your EA can buy Cartier, my man. I am with you. I went to a wise advisor of mine the other day. He said it was a secret that you're missing, Harry. Is it's easy to give the love that you favor giving, which for
it is easy. Yeah,
it's hard to actually give something that is not normally comfortable for you,
right?
And you have to change the love that you give. I was like, that's pretty wise.
Yeah, I think I find that to be true in my life. It's really hard to match what she is looking for.
Aloe, I've got to move to a final stage, which is company creation and entrepreneurship. You obviously started a new company recently. What was the genesis and the idea behind that? You're sitting there, incredibly successful career musically. Why are you like, I want to create a company, and why now's the right time?
Okay, well, I feel like my life is set up in a way where I want to add as much positive value to the world as possible through philanthropy, through art, and now hopefully through commerce. And I got sick with Omicron at the top of 2022 in January. And I just started thinking about all the research papers I'd been reading and all of the science that I was kind of learning about the disease. And I did a quick Google search, how to block ACE2. ACE2 is the receptor in our bodies that the spike protein of SARS-CoV-2 exploits in order to enter the cell. And so I thought, can it be that hard to just block that interaction? And I did a Google search. I found a peer-reviewed paper by some scientists in Houston. And I reached out to them. And I thought, this got to be a product. What are you guys doing with this? And they said, university's risk averse, and we are professors. We teach all day. We don't have time to do this as a thing, as a business. I said, what if I license the IP from the university? Would you guys help me push it along? They said, yeah, we'll give you all the info that you need, the study plans to take this to a clinical research organization and advance the research. So for me, it was really a philanthropic endeavor. I was like, the world needs this, because if we can block SARS-CoV-2 and block COVID, we can block other coronaviruses with this particular solution, then, I think it'll save a lot of lives. It'll help us be, healthier, and it'll help commerce when industries and whole countries grind to a halt. We'll have an option of whether or not we want to grind to a halt because we have a prophylactic or a therapeutic that's going to help us through it. So I'm in the business. I'm in the middle of like developing a company, hiring on executives from pharma or biotech, and finding advisors and developing a FDA pathway. All of this is brand new to me, but I think it's a worthy endeavor.
It's absolutely a worthy endeavor. We were DMing about it before, but like, what are the biggest challenges and what are the biggest surprises for you in terms of those early stages of company formation?
So one of the things I didn't know was that biotech is a specific sector, and not all VCs are amenable to biotech as an investment. So I was just talking to any VC that I could get on the phone and wasting their time and my time. And so now I recognize, okay, there's specific funds that I should be speaking to. And then when you talk to those funds, they're not really worried about your idea. You could have the greatest idea in the world. Who's your team? Right? Who's going to take this from a dream to an actual product on the shelf? And who's going to return my money? And these are the things I was not really contemplating at first, because like I said, it was a philanthropic endeavor, but now I recognize it has to be an enterprise play in order to get buy-in. And in order to get buy-in, you need all of these T's crossed and I's dotted. So the hardest part really is finding the team that's going to help me push it forward.
Totally. I think the other thing that people forget with VCs is we think in increments. People often think they want to see like the $20 billion outcome. And yes, we absolutely do. But we also want to see where the next round comes from. And so if you come to a VC or me or whoever it is and say, hey, the 3 core hurdles that we're going to face in the next 18 months are X, Y, and Z, this is how we're going to de-risk them. And when we do de-risk them, we're going to raise a $25 million Series A, which will enable us to do X, Y, and Z again. Do you see what I mean? It's Absolutely. Like both having the incremental challenge versus the long-term vision. I think people forget. And knowing what you need to get
some people forget. I just don't know. This is the first time. This is first for me. So thank you.
Listen, Aloe, you give me advice on love and marriage. I'll give you advice on, hurdles to company building. I get that totally. Have you enjoyed it?
Yeah, it's really satisfying. It's great. I love learning. And again, I love learning processes. So every time somebody tells me something I didn't know before, it becomes a tiger lily blossom. I
love that. But rule number 1, never say philanthropy to an investor in a pitch deck or around.
Learn that,
it's
for sure.
As a word, without a non-profit, the words that we don't fundamentally understand. Um, but I want to move into a quick fire, Aloe. So I say a short statement, you give me your immediate thoughts. Does that sound okay?
Let's try.
So where's your favorite place to go on tour? You said you try and avoid tour as much as possible. Why?
Switzerland. Clean air, clean water, beautiful green hills, wonderful food, nice people, safe environment.
I wasn't expecting that. What would you most like to change about the world of music?
I would like for everyone to be involved in music in some way. I think a lot of people tell me, oh, I'm not a singer. Oh, I can't play an instrument. And I fundamentally believe strongly that music has a healing power, and for everyone to be engaged in music is a type of healing. So you should be doing something, banging a drum, strumming a guitar poorly, and, breaking glass with a terrible voice, but just doing it is cathartic.
You tweeted this the other day and I stole it from you. If I wrote a song about your life, what would the title be? I thought of ABBA, Money, Money, Money for me, but
I didn't even think about it for me, but now that you say it, I will say happiness.
Happiness would be it. Okay, I need to write a song now. What one word would be on your tombstone?
One word on my tombstone?
Yeah. Like mine's persistence.
All done. That's not one word, sorry. Complete. Sufficient. Complete. Complete. Job done. That's it. Like, when I'm gone, I really want to be sure that my job is complete. And that job ultimately is transferring all the knowledge I have to everyone that I can. My kids paramount, but why should any of this knowledge, any of it, die with me?
Aloe, who do you look up to and why them?
I look up to Nelson Mandela, Mohandas Gandhi, and Martin Luther King. Their dedication to humanity in the face of violence and adversity is inspiring in a way that keeps me grounded. I don't know that I have what they have, but I will strive to get close.
When you look at the world today, what are you most optimistic about and for?
I'm really optimistic about youth. I feel like they recognize the extreme challenges that we have with, our relationship with ecology, with social and political dynamics, with economic disparity. And I feel like their connection to humanity is going to help to bridge a lot of these issues and help us find solutions that will help us avoid cataclysm.
I agree with you actually in terms of the optimism there. What are you most concerned and worried about on the flip side?
I do have the optimism I just mentioned. It's the things that I'm concerned about is that too many people suffer before we get to the actual solutions. People are talking about AI and machine learning and robotics. It is a concern because certainly the jobs that we can do as humans will be replaced by technology and have been over the progression of our industrial age. But that gives us more time to be human, I think. So I'm concerned in the short run for how we all manage that friction, but I don't worry too much about the long run.
I think the hard thing is, you look at kind of history of technological innovation, and actually it's been quite a steady transition between states. Actually, it tends to go between 20 to 30 years in terms of the transitory movement of adoption of new technology. And what's so difficult with this transition is it's more like 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. And the development and the speed of transition is so much faster than ever before that the humanitarian ability to move with it, I think, is where we sit in a very uncomfortable position. So I do, in many ways, share your thoughts there. That and liquidity for funds
But I'm hearing there's liquidity everywhere. Some people are really bullish. Some people are really bullish.
Well, yeah, clearly they've been smoking something. That's not happened. I want to finish, my friend. 2028. Where's Aloe Blacc then? If we have a show then.
2028? What I am really interested in doing is, first of all, my company is going to be either already with a product on the shelf or very, very close, like phase 3 trials and success with lots of investment. That's one thing. In terms of music, I've expanded, and I'm sharing the magic of the songwriting process, which you asked me about, on television in a way that people are fascinated to see stories being told and developed before their eyes. We get to pull the curtain back on how gold mining works, how fishing works, how kitchens and chefs work, but nobody's really pulled it back on the actual songwriting production creation process, and that's what I'd really love to do.
But I totally agree with you, which is why I've so loved today. Like, no, honestly, really, like, discussing how you take nothing and turn into something, and something so special that affects millions of people. Like, that's fucking awesome. And the fact that, respectfully, your way is totally different to someone else's way and someone else's way, that's amazing. And what happens then if you see patterns between each of you? And I'm totally with you. And that's why I was so excited for this. Aloe, you've been amazing. Thank you so much for putting up with my very naive questions, I'm sure in many ways, but I've loved doing this.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.